welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today, I'm doing something that I hope is a lot of fun. And this is a throwback series of legacy matches versus Andreas Ecobaronen Peterson, content creator. You can check out his YouTube for his side of these matches. I'll have that linked in the video description. And what we're going to do is we found 3 classic legacy matches throughout the last 15 years of different eras of legacy that we think are going to be fun to watch and fun to play. The first one, I'm playing 2010 Counterbalance. This is from Grand Prix Columbus. This was played by Tom Martell. He made top 8 of that event. That top 8 was important for a number of reasons. One, a young starry-eyed legacy player named Bryant Cook top 8'd this event with the Epic Storm, a storm brew of his own design. The rest of that is history. Another thing happened in this top 8, which is a young Caleb Durward top 8'd this event with Survival of the Fittest featuring Vengevine, a newly printed card. And that sent Legacy in a spiral that resulted in Survival of the Fittest being banned later that year, maybe early the next year. But a lot of cool stuff happened in this event. Where I actually was in life here, I did play in this event. I was finishing my senior year of college. This was early 2010. I was in my era where I was the big fish locally, but I was not actually very good at Magic once we got to the regional scale. I played Bug Landstill in this event. I did not come close to making day 2. Andreas in this playoff will be playing Sneak Attack, also from the top 8 of this event. Shout out to MTG Top 8 for having these records. By the way, small aside, access to Magic history, just being able to pull up these 15-year-old deck lists is awesome. Shout out to MTG Top 8, MTG Goldfish. Moxfield is newer to the scene, but they, I'm sure, will be a resource for this going long. And major slaps to Wizards of the Coast for purging their old event coverage. But here we go. We've got Tom Martell. This is the deck I'm playing. This event was won by Tomohiro Seitu with Merfolk. Here is Bryant Cook with the Epic Storm. And here is my opponent for this match. It's going to be Sneak and Joe. You'll notice Griselbrand doesn't exist. We got Woodfall Primus alongside Emrakul here. Emrakul was brand new at the time. Like I said, this Blue-Green Madness deck featuring Vengevine, which was printed in the same set as Emrakul. Seething Song, Show and Tell. Main deck Wipe Away. This is a beautiful thing. That's going to be my opponent. Era-appropriate Sneak and Joe. And I really wanted to play Countertop, because without Sensei's Divining Top, this deck obviously doesn't exist anymore. We also didn't want to play Terminus Miracles, because that deck is super boring. I would play it and I would love it if it was legal today, but I don't think that features the same quaint little era we got here. We got Spell Snares in this deck. We've got 3 counter spells in this deck. Oblivion Ring, Vendilion Click, 3 main deck copies of Fire Spout. Those are going to be rough in this particular pairing, but these are the type of things that we did back then. Diversify your mana costs. 1, 2, and 3 are really all the costs there were in Legacy. 3 Jaces are the win con. 4 Tarmogoyfs are the win con. And just a bunch of answers, and really just turtle up behind Counterbalance, stack your top correctly, and hope it works. Our second match in this series is going to be 2012 Esper Stoneblade versus Rug Delver. 2012 was a magical era because Delver of Secrets and Snapcaster Mage had been printed in Innistrad, but Avacyn Restored hadn't come out yet and given us Terminus and Griselbrand. A lot of Legacy players point to this as the golden best era of Legacy there ever was. And where I was at this point, I was out of college. I had moved to Pittsburgh. I had surrounded myself with a much better, or at least higher motivated, better testing skill. I don't want to disparage my college play group, who were great, but I was playing with like Andrew Cuneo and Steve Rubin and just Richard Shea, just these Magic experts every 2 or 3 times a week. And I was surrounding myself with them, and I was getting a lot better very quickly during this era. This is when I really started to win at Magic. And Legacy was entirely our jam. We could play, due to the support at local stores in Pittsburgh and Empire Games just over the border in Ohio, we could play Legacy for a dual land 2 or 3 times a month on a Saturday. And we did. We traveled all over and we did this. And Esper Stoneblade, Rug Delver, and Maverick were kind of the 1, 2, 3, the rock, paper, scissors that the rest of the format was built around. And if you can imagine it, based on today's power level and what Legacy decks do now, just 3 fair decks, one of them's not even blue, are the center of the Legacy format. Just really incredible time, really engaging gameplay. My list is 2012. This list won Grand Prix Indianapolis, also in the hands of Tom Martell. Just coincidentally, I just picked 2 decks I like from history, so shout out to Tom Martell for doing well with decks that I love. This was a big deal at the time because Dark Ascension had just come out, the second set in the Innistrad block, so we are right on the eve of Terminus ruining everything for us. Lingering Souls featured as this insane grind package in this Legacy deck. There are 4 copies, and you can intuition for them. This is basically 2 and a blue at instant speed, and then you get 8 tokens. That's so many creatures at this era of Legacy. Another really cool thing about this deck that I want to call out real quick, Force of Will, 3 of in the main. That's what I'm talking about when I say, like, Maverick and Rug Delver were your opponents, which are matchups you don't really want high numbers of Force of Will in. The 4th Force is over here in the sideboard. I will not be bringing it in our set. I'll probably be cutting the other 3. Tom was on the cutting edge here. Andreas will be playing an era-appropriate Rug Delver deck featuring Nimble Mongoose, and it will be the classic Rug Delver list that really is trying to just deal exactly 20 damage before the opponent stabilizes, which is not how Delver's built anymore. They have real card advantage. They can grind. They have stuff like Murktide Regent. His list does not. And we are going to go back and forth over tiny resources until one of us breaks through. And our final era of Magic, 2017. I will be playing Grixis Delver. This is a top 8 list from Eternal Weekend, piloted by Brian Koval, aka BoshNRoll. This is my list that I top 8'd Eternal Weekend with for the first time in 2017. And this match will be personal because Andreas will be playing his 4-color Czech Pile deck that he finished 2nd place in a Team Grand Prix with. So these are both our lists that we did well in real major events with. This is the tail end of the Gitaxian Probe era. It's the tail end of the Deathrite Shaman era. It is hard to believe that we got to play with this card for as long as we did. Deathrite, a little more controversial. It should have been banned and it should stay banned, but also, like, you're really going to ban a Manador? Come on. It keeps Reanimator in check. Were all things people were saying at the time. And those things are all true. I don't know. Here's Deathrite Shaman. This list was built slightly bigger than other Grixis Delver decks at the time because Czech Pile was starting to become popular and you wanted to be a little bigger in the mirror and you wanted stickier threats versus Czech Pile, which is a deck that's just chock full of insane removal. That's why we've got Young Pyromancer in the main deck. We've got True Name Nemesis. That's hard to kill. Young Pyromancer makes friends. Also the combo of Young Pyromancer, Gitaxian Probe you, make a token, Cabal Therapy you. Now I know your hand, so I'm going to hit on Cabal Therapy. Cabal Therapy makes a token. Sack a token, flashback Cabal Therapy makes a token. This was a very common turn 3 play pattern of the era, and it's completely messed up. Like, Gitaxian Probe should definitely not be illegal. And that's a very common thing. And then Snapcaster Mage gets value when it arrives. And then Tombstalker lined up extremely well versus the interaction of the era. And where other decks might be playing more fragile creatures, really the only creature in this deck that doesn't have sort of built-in durability or built-in card advantage is the Delver itself. Every other thing just does something in addition to having stats. And that's how this deck was constructed for this tournament. Those are my decks. We're going to play them in chronological order, which means you're going to get 4-color Counterbalance versus Sneak Attack, pre-Grizzlebrand Sneak Attack up first. Let's get into it. This is the Legacy Through the Eras playoff. I'm on the draw in round 1, playing against Sneak Attack. I have to mulligan this hand. The tops, what a thrill to see this in my opening hand in Legacy again, by the way. Feeling good. But Swords of Plowshares can answer Woodfall Primus. It doesn't answer Emrakul. Vendilion Click is actually a huge weapon in the matchup of this era. Like your opponent casts Show and Tell, you respond with V-Click, and you can strip their monster they were going to put in. And then you both just put in lands or whatever, and you're off to the races. But my deck has Counterspell in it. It's got Spell Snare. It's got Counterbalance, Force of Will. I'm not going to keep this when I know I'm against Sneak Attack. Okay, this is better. My list has 22 lands in it, which feels like thousands compared to how Legacy decks are constructed today. But when you're trying to cast Counterspell, it makes sense. I do need to find another blue source. There is one copy of Karakas in my main deck. Let's see what we can do here. Got there immediately. Sick. Okay. I'm going to play Tundra and pass. If he goes for it right now, I'm going to have to Miracle Brainstorm. Or Emergency Brainstorm. I shouldn't say Miracle. Those don't exist yet. It was a simpler time. But Emergency Brainstorm. I'm just going to draw for turn. Found a Plow. There's one of those on the bottom of my deck as well. Okay, holding up Counterspell. Or Brainstorm plus Spell Snare. There's not a lot of snares to snare in this deck. Twos in his list include Daze. That would be really funny to pay 1 to cast Spell Snare on Daze rather than just pay 1 for Daze. LOL. There's an Echoing Truth, and that is it. So it's Daze or 1 copy of Echoing Truth. Yeah, this Spell Snare is Force Fodder, or I'm going to Brainstorm it away. I would like another layer of protection up. I might just end step Brainstorm to make sure, give myself the best chance that I don't miss a land drop or miss a turn with Counterspell up. That denies me 1 card I would see if I wait till my turn, but I think it is critical to actually have counters available right now. His opponent's deck has 4 copies of Daze and 4 copies of Force of Will. I'd really like to get this Vendilion Click on this stack, which is another reason to Brainstorm in the end step, because even if I Brainstorm next turn and hit the land that I want and then get to leave up Counterspell, that doesn't leave up V-Click. That was a long Brainstorm. Must be coming up with big plans over there. Probably checking my list for if I can beat Daze in this spot, which I absolutely cannot. All right, Counterspell. Oh, wow. I didn't expect that to work. And we hit the land. Everything is perfect. Everything is awesome when you're part of a team. And now I have Counterspell up and I'm protected from Daze, but he clearly doesn't have Daze or I would have lost last turn. Unless that was like a strategic duress show and tell. Okay, Seething Song resolves. Sneak Attack now on the stack. And we pretty clearly just Counterspell this. Spell Pierce! Nasty! Okay. So I might get Emrakul here. 50-50 if it's Emrakul or Primus. If it's Primus, I'd rather just Swords to Plowshare it. But if it's Emrakul, I need to Brainstorm here. Okay. I think I'm going to take my coin flip on Emrakul, or rather than Emergency Brainstorm and then lose to Primus. Because even if it's Emrakul, I sack my permanence, I'm at 4 and we grind out. Okay. We grind out. And I can still Brainstorm here. Just need some lands and we're still playing the game. Okay, well, looking foolish that now that the Force of Will appeared, but that coin flip is actually huge because you sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. There's no exile clause, which means the Primus would come back. It would kill both my white sources. And I could have guaranteed fended that off versus maybe probably, or maybe hit Force of Will. Looks silly now that it happened, but what are you going to do? If I'm getting Snake again immediately, all right, you got me. Calculated risk that went wrong. Firespout comes out of the deck. Firespout is a 3 for Counterbalance, which matters a little, but it doesn't matter more than the fact that Firespout is a completely unplayable blank, and I have a lot to bring in. Frozen Grip's in the maybe pile. Okay, Firespout for sure out. I think Plows come out too. Jace might be too slow. A Plow can answer a Primus if it comes into play, which nothing else can do. I have Oblivion Ring. The opponent has 3 Blood Moons in the sideboard, 2 additional Spell Pierces. So maybe Grip is just really important versus Blood Moon. But green is the basic I don't play. And I have 2 Hydroblasts. Okay. And there's no juke monsters. In the time, there was no Arcane Artisan, or is that what that card's called? The 3-drop? There was no Maddening Hex or whatever they might do now. Yeah, I think I want at least one Crossing Grip in here. And maybe Jace is the chunky blank. There's also 4 Pyroblasts in that sideboard. 3 Blood Moon, 4 Pyroblast, 2 Spell Pierce, or resistance I could expect. Lawan's a sicko. Just shout out to a different age. I had a foil Lawan. It cost me like $25 at the time. Just blows out Merfolk and Progenitus. Wild stuff. I think this makes sense. Jace could bounce a Primus. Oblivion Ring could bounce a Primus. And that sounds like a lot of cope, but I also just don't want Primus in play. All right. This is my plan. Okay, I have a Force, a blue card, and a Grip. I'm going to keep. Pass the turn. Maybe I'm supposed to lead on Misty just in case he turn 1's a Blood Moon with Force backup. There's only 3 Ancient Tombs and 3 Lotus Petals and no Simian Spirit Guides in this list. That's just how it was constructed in the era. It would be pretty crazy to turn 1 Blood Moon me. Okay, didn't happen. The Goof. Okay, I could just shove Tarmogoyf, see what happens. Yeah, I'm just going to cast Tarmogoyf. If he wants to force or daze this, that's a counterspell he doesn't have. And if it stays in play, I can apply pressure. I still have Force blue card up. If I just get Show and Tell dazed, you got me. Fetching with Misty Rainforest, that's not an Ancient Tomb. That is a Ponder. Goyf already going to be 3-4. I cast it as a 0-1. Half a turn cycle later, it's 3-4. That's how Tarmogoyf works, if you forgot. You kids don't even know. This card has done a pretty good job staying relevant. It shows up from time to time. It's a great thing to cast with Luris in Modern. Now we have a 1-mana version, but it only counts your graveyard. So Nethergoyf would be 1-2 after I crack this fetch land. It did not shuffle either of those Ponders. You need literally all 3 Lotus Petals in the deck to do anything right now. Okay, I drew Sensei's top. It's time to start protecting myself from Blood Moon. It's actually really interesting, because if opponent casts Blood Moon this turn, I would rather leave up Crossing Grip. If opponent casts Show and Tell this turn, I'd rather have Sensei's top in play. I think I'm just going to pass. Lotus Petal. Ancient Tomb. Show and Tell. Force this. I can see the red mana for Pyroblast ready. Mana abilities are still faster than Crossing Grip. Like, I couldn't have gripped the Lotus Petal and then forced with less mana over there. It's not a thing. Spell Pierce. Okay. I must have 2 Spell Pierces, I guess, is the line here. Real shame Crossing Grip doesn't work on Lotus Petal, because that's actually... Oh no, then I wouldn't be able to pay for Spell Pierce. Never mind, doesn't matter. Okay. I'm going to fetch my basic island and leave up red. Make them think about Pyroblast. I don't have it, but I want to make them think about it. Daze. Okay, so we're getting double dazed. If Show and Tell puts in Sneak Attack here, we could die on the spot. If it puts in a monster, I have Sensei's top to dig for Karakas or Plow. Okay, it's Emrakul. Hand is 2 Volcanic Islands, 1 unknown. Okay, so Karakas is in my deck to solve this, and no other cards. Let me just make sure I'm not confusing the list. No, there is a Karakas in this list. Oh, Oblivion Ring plays. Karakas O-Ring, I have 2 outs. I think I just take my draw first. Plains isn't it. Top, come on, 2 outer. Shit. Okay, now what do? I think I just lose. I can flip top into Brainstorm, then Brainstorm would steal Scalding Tarn Tarmogoyf, Sensei's top that doesn't actually change cards at all. Okay. I'm willing to believe I just mulliganed wrong. Also, just, not chasing the Force game 1 is something I could have done differently. But I also think this matchup seems pretty terrible, honestly. Okay, on to the next round. We're moving forward 2 years to 2012.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks. And groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
I'm on the play in round 2. This is 2012 Esper Stoneblade versus Rug Delver. My hand is kind of horrendous. 2012 Rug Delver was the full Stifle Wasteland, only 3 dazes, but 4 Stifles. I mentioned in the deck tech, this is a matchup where Force of Will is bad. Batterskull is your Omega endgame, and even though there are 2 Brainstorms here, I don't think I can keep this hand. I'm gonna mulligan. Oh, come on, Tower of the Magistrate, not like this! Yeah, Stoneblade just playing 4 basic lands and having a bunch of stability was kind of the appeal of this deck at the time. Okay, this hand's actually good. I'm going to bottom Thoughtseize and one of the Lingering Souls. Swords to Plowshare is good against Delver and Tarmogoyf, bad against Nimble Mongoose. Okay. And I'm going to fetch Basic Island and pass. It's playing around Stifle for real. It's kind of a meme in 2024 to play around Stifle, but it was kind of everything in this era. Opponent kept 7, and they're on the draw, so they're up 3 cards on me. Jace the Mind Sculptor, just what I'm looking for. His list has 4 bolts and 3 chain lightning, so technically can win without combat if the game just drags on for infinity, which is a feature of lists of this era. Okay, moment of truth. Can we hit a land drop? Yes, indeed. Okay. And this plays around Wasteland. I have access to black now if I need it. There is a second island in the deck. There's only 1 plains, 1 swamp, and then a bunch of duels. Opponent hasn't really cast any spells yet, which is super interesting to me. That smells like Stifle. Because like I said, Delver in this era was not meant to just take its sweet time, go 1 for 1, play a giant Murktide Regent, that kind of thing. I can draw 1 more card before I have to go to discard. I'm just going to be super patient here. If you don't turn on Stifle and Daze and all these cards that are in this deck, the cards just don't function. And I'm trying to be super patient. Okay, a Thoughtseize. I'm going to continue sculpting, respecting Stifle. If I can draw just a natural black source that I don't have to fetch into, then I can check their hand for Stifles before we do anything else. I don't even want to cast this Brainstorm if I can't shuffle it away. I could play Stoneforge Mystic. Okay, now he's forcing the issue. I'm going to Brainstorm in response. Wow, that's bad. Okay, I'm going to put back Jace the Mind Sculptor and probably Counterspell. It's either Counterspell or one of the souls. Like, if he actually has Stifle here, which I feel like is almost a lock the way the game has rolled out, then I don't want Counterspell. I have to redraw these cards anyway. So, okay, I'll put back one of the souls. Yep, to the surprise of no one. And this is just using the resources that he has and the overwhelming card advantage to get literally anything happening. I don't have to go to discard till next turn. However, I'm just going to play Stoneforge. If you daze, you daze, but I really want to shuffle here. So getting this bolted or chain lightning, I don't really care about. Getting it countered, I need to start spending cards from my hand anyway, and I'd love a shuffle. Sick. We actually got all the way through on the shuffle. I will put Batterskull in my hand to make this worth bolting. Like if I just get Jitte, could let it come into play, let me equip it, that's 2 full turns worth of mana for me, and then just bolt whatever. But that one forced the issue on the bolt. I am approaching the zone of the game where I'm going to have to go to discard though, which will be really bad. Ponder. Okay, Nimble Mongoose on the stack. This is where I really need my Lingering Souls, and this is a joke, a meme in 2024, but this is a serious problem in 2012. Okay, Brainstorm, please do something. Okay, we did find a land, put back Batterskull, and now it's awkward because I do want to Thoughtseize my opponent, but also I want to fetch Basic Island right now. Okay. I'm going to fetch Basic Island, and I will force a Stifle. Cool, didn't need it. All right, Stoneforge Mystic, get in there. Now I'm just pummeling opponent with spells, and all of this is in service of the great Lingering Souls. There goes a Daze. That's fine. Opponent's got 5 cards in graveyard, functionally 6 whenever he wants them with the Misty Rainforest. Another Goose. Continues to be loose. They're not loose yet. Needs another spell. But this is where the game starts to flip. If he just like bolts me and starts clapping for 6, my life total disappears very quickly. Yep, there it is. This is the play pattern. But you'll also notice Opponent's down to 4 cards in hand, and I'm about to have 7. So if I can turn the ship here, we're in business. Oh, Ponder for the land is a little greedy, but I kind of like it. I am going to Ponder for the land. We got there. Fetch. As indicated, doesn't have a stifle, and I'm going to believe him. Do I want blue-black or black-white? I want black. I'm out of basics. I have a swamp, but Flooded Strand doesn't get it. Does triple blue matter more than triple white? Or double white? Triple blue versus double white. I'm literally holding 4 white spells. And my double blue is safe from Wasteland. Alright, yeah, I'm going to get Scrubland. And start flooding out the army. These are just chumps right now because Mongoose is loose. The second daze. If I force this daze, if I don't force the daze, I'm at 4 and an insane bolt range. If I do force the daze, alright, huge beating here, but Mongoose, untouchable, forced me back. Now I'm dead to Lightning Bolt at any point. And this is what I'm talking about with Mongoose. Just 2 plows in my hand, 2 geese in play. If those were Delver, I'm 100% stable, but instead we're losing because it's Nimble Mongoose. Busted Magic card. Opponent's got 3 cards in hand. One of them's a land, but there are 5. Nope, used 2 of them already. There are 5 more Lightning Bolts in their deck. Or even if I somehow get stable against this shit, I'm still behind overall. Like 1 top deck at any point, and I lose. I'll probably plow one of my spirits this turn, like chump, chump, plow, go to 4. Because plow's just not doing anything else right now. If he bolts me over the top, I lose. Okay, I'm at 4. Brainstorm. I have 1 souls in the graveyard. If Brainstorm hits another black source, we could double souls. And then I can actually kill a goose. No chance. All right. I'm actually hard locked here. Am I hard locked? So I can Lingering Souls, plow one of them. I'm at 5. I redraw Thoughtseize. I could play the other souls. Chump, chump. I'm at 5. Redraw Force of Will. And then I take 6. And Jace can't help here. Yeah, just dead. Okay. Yeah, Mull to 5. Missing land drop stuff. But we got Wastelanded and Stifled that game. That is what that deck is about. And they did it. Dark Blast kills unflipped Delvers, but nothing else. That's not really what this is for. Inquisition is basically Thoughtseize because the whole deck is so cheap. Spell Pierce can help me fight over bolts and stifles. Sort of Feast and Famine is a unit. Just their creatures can't block anymore. Force of Will is coming out. Opponent's sideboard has 3 copies of Sulfur Elemental, which, let's talk about that one. This is specifically an answer from the era of 2 Lingering Souls. 3 mana creature, flash, split second, white creatures get +1/-1. This will arrive. I can't stop it. It will wrath my board. Also, 1 Ancient Grudge in the sideboard. Don't need to click on that. Ancient Grudge. I was usually on the Delver side. I played Rug Delver during this era, and I was usually the one beating up on Stoneblade. And Ancient Grudge just checkmate. Counter it, flash it back. How many forces do you think you play? No thanks. There are also 2 Pyroblasts and a Spell Pierce, which makes Jace and Intuition a lot worse. The Engineered Explosives and Perish are huge, though, because those are just answers to Goose. And that game, if I just sweep up the geese at 10 life, I think I'm completely stable. And now we have a sideboard option that does that. Zealous Persecution can kill loose gooses, contained geese, and unflipped Delvers. Can't save my Lingering Souls because Sulfur Elemental is just both a permanent effect and has split second. I don't think I Thoughtseize. That gives me 3 Inquisitions to check their hand without taking any damage. All their cards I care about cost 1, 2, or 3 anyway. Do I want Zealous P? I have no graveyard hate. Well, I have 3 Surgicals, but I'm not bringing them in. Blue Blast can kill Sulfur Elemental. Yeah, I think Jace is asking a lot here. I'm just going to hit submit because I'm out of time. I'm not sure about Zealous Persecution. If there's a game 3, I'll probably bring it in. Okay. I will keep this. And I'm actually just going to turn 1, fetch for a basic island, and cast Engineered Explosives for 1. There are stifles in his deck, but if he knows that I have this just sitting in play that kills 8 of the 12 threats in the deck, then stifle might be more resistant to going after my lands. All right, yep, just making me do it. Sick, drew the basic planes. Life is good. And I am just going to do this. Just a clean exchange early. I have Plow and Jitte in hand, which are good against the other creatures in the deck. Look at this shameful Modern Masters Tarmogoyf. We're doing something here. Playing an era. No respect at all. Okay. As my rage subsides, I could cast Stoneforge Mystic here with Spell Pierce protection, or I could just Plow Goyf. I'm going to go for Stoneforge Mystic. Get the Swamp. Basics are under me. I can cast my spells. Batterskull or Sword of Feast and Famine. I have nothing to carry either if they have a Bolt. But if I use... Okay, I'm going to take Sword of Feast and Famine because it is a fun showcase of the era. It beats Tarmogoyf specifically. If they just don't have red, like low land count and 3 colors of the era is actually kind of a huge beating on this deck. I'm not going to spell Pierce the Brainstorm. I'll see if he digs for a Bolt, and then I'll pierce that. Yeah, I remember playing a lot of games where I'm just blue-green for a while or just blue-red for a while. Green is more important. If Rug Delver played a basic at the time, it was usually a forest, not an island, which is interesting because green is the color that actually wins the game. Obviously not blocking. There's a fetch. In days, we'll still clear my Stoneforge. Oh, Ponder. All right. Taking time. Could have done that pre-combat and make Goyf bigger and decided not to. So clearly has something to do with this mana. He wouldn't have just missed damage. He was doing something there. Representing something. Now I have a really interesting decision, which is, okay, drawing Stoneforge number 2 makes this a lot more exciting. Okay. I'm going to sandbag the second white source and play another Stoneforge. Because now I can get Batterskull and play a white source right away and get Batterskull into play. If he's got the Ancient Grudge, my Batterskull is going to die here, and my primary win con is out of the deck. But that just played around Stifle, Lightning Bolt, every other piece of interaction in the deck. He's got another Volk, another Goyf. Wasting my Scrubland. That means I'm not getting Ancient Grudged here. If I draw a land to play and equip Sword of Feast and Famine, that's really insane. I'm going to take the 5 here. At the very least, I could plow the untapped Goyf, get 4 of that life back. Okay. Plow this Goyf, leaving up Spell Pierce. Do I Brainstorm? Or do I cast Jitte? Or do I leave up Spell Pierce? I think I attack first. I'm going to attack with 1 Stoneforge. Because if I spike a white source on this Brainstorm, I'm kind of interested in the other one. Brainstorm. Red Blast. Okay. Goyf's pretty big. I can't answer this one. I do have the Sword of Feast and Famine. If I could get it in and equip it, the game ends. But could also just wait for me to get it in and equip it, or in response to equip Ancient Grudge, the Batterskull. All right, Goyf number 3. The truck is rolling. Stifle's still a huge problem here. I'm going to give him a chance to stifle the fetch land, even though that is not the correct thing to stifle. Okay, moment of truth. Yeah, this is the correct thing to stifle. But there's so much damage on board right now that the stifle might be enough at this point. Okay, there was a long hesitation, and I'm just going to equip. I could equip over here, but then that turns on Lightning Bolt. Yeah, I'm just going to equip. The Germ has the stifle. Okay. We got to survive a Goyf hit here, and then try to turn it around. 2 cards left in hand over there. Just drew a 3rd one. And Lightning Bolt is bad news. Double Lightning Bolt is really bad news. Okay, I have to block. If I block Goyf, I go to 10, I take 5. I can keep Stoneforge here. But I lost my lifelink monster, and now we're up against double Goyf, and now Lightning Bolt as live as possible. Jesus, all 4 Goyfs? Do you even play Nimble Mongoose or Delver Secrets? Where did they go? Where are they? Tell me. Okay, How do I get out of this? I can play Underground Sea, equip Sword of Feast and Famine. I can spell Pierce a Lightning Bolt, and I'll get my mana back afterwards. I can pick up and redeploy Batterskull with my remaining mana. There's so many Goyfs, though. It's an outrageous quantity of Tarmogoyf. I'm 1 mana short of equipping Jitte here. Equipping Batterskull wouldn't have been enough there and doesn't protect itself. Okay, I'm going to attack with Sword. Trigger on the stack. Float 3 mana. Opponent discarded a Daze. I currently have 3 extra mana. If I pick up Batterskull, I can drop it back in. That is susceptible to Stifle. And I'm still dead in combat. Yeah, I'm just short here. I don't think... Oh, I could just recast Batterskull, which gets blown out by every piece of interaction that he plays, but yeah, I'm going to pick up Batterskull with my floating mana. Just discarded a Daze, which would have stuffed this line. Yeah, all I can do here is cast Batterskull and hope it's good enough. Quadruple Goyf, because 1 I plowed. Okay, do you have a Stifle? Okay. Well, here we go. Just discarded Daze, could have discarded the other card. There are 2 cards in hand, so I have to imagine he's got a spell. A Lightning Bolt wins it. Just bolt the Stoneforge, and I can't come back. If you somehow have nothing, I can turn this around. Block. Okay, I'm at 4. What's left in your hand? What's going on over there? Draw for turn. Inquisition of Kozilek. I can answer the question for myself, and then equipping Jitte is not good enough. I have to just equip Batterskull and swing for the fences. All right. Dead to literally anything, but I win if he has literally nothing. I'm in the red zone. I've created a battle boat. Sulfur Elemental can block this, so I don't get all my mana back. I do get a shitload of life, though. Okay, yeah, that does not solve the problem. All right. Come on, battle boat. Hold the fort. Don't draw Ancient Grudge. Remember when I said in sideboarding Ancient Grudge is an absolute hammer? This is the spot where Ancient Grudge is lights out. But I have created a monster. I've assembled a contraption. I got big old pants on. Just passing with no attack. Let's go. Oh my god. Okay. Now I can really start asserting myself. Inquisition you. Play and equip Jitte. Okay. Sulfur Elemental's in. Goose is gone. Cast Jitte. Opponent's Hellbent. Equip Jitte. Now we're running away. I'm going to screenshot this for hype, because this is the moment that we all live for. Okay. I gain another 8 life. Jitte has 2 counters on it. I'm at 20. Opponent's Hellbent. Ancient Grudge still flips this, but I mean, down to mostly a 1-outer. Yeah! Let's go! This magic is so good. Holy smokes. Okay. Jace could have bounced a Goyf at one point. Perish, I was trying Live Assault to Perish. That would have been a lights out spell at any point. Spell Snare, Spell Pierce, I like all those. It's really just, do I think any of the cards in my deck are worse than Zealous Persecution? And Jace gets Pyroblasted, Spell Pierce, Dazed quite easily. Lightning Bolted once he's there. Jace is fragile, but also a complete unit if it does get to run away. Lingering Souls is great against all cards in their deck except the Sulfur Elemental, which has 3 of and obviously brought them all in. Snapcaster Mage, haven't looked at that card yet. It's forgot it was in my deck over those 2 games. I actually think with the addition of Sulfur Elemental after board in high numbers, Zealous Persecution as a pseudo sweeper is probably better than Lingering Souls. Okay, let's do it. I have access to basic black and basic blue or white. Perish, Vindicate. I am going to keep this. I'm worried it's a little chunky, but like, we haven't seen the card Delver of Secrets yet out of my opponent, and that card would be insane right now because it doesn't get swept up in Perish. And Vindicate costs 1 million. Opponent mulled to 5, your turn. I did that in game 1. Let's go. That also that means he's way down on resources, but it also means he's going to play balls to the walls. And here's exactly the thing that I didn't really want to happen. Delver of Secrets. Okay, I'm going to fetch Basic Island and pass the turn. Stifle is an interesting card because on a Mull to 5, and I mean, now we're in different mulligan rules. At the time, it was the Paris mulligan, where would have just had 5 cards. So even though we are playing Throwback, Magic Online isn't going to give us a different rule set for this. Okay, the Turbo Flip. So in the era, a Mull to 5 would have been way worse than a Mull to 5 now. And a Mull to 5 now, Stifle is one of those cards that's like frequently a tasty little cherry on top of whatever you're doing anyway. But if you have to send some cards away, it's frequently the first to go because it's so situational. You just don't have room for that when you're playing 3 cards down on your opponent. I'm still going to play around it if I can, though. But that was just a theory conversation about that card. Okay, so we've seen the Stifle. We see Ponder. We see a land that could cast Ponder. If he doesn't cast this Ponder, I'm going to suspect Stifle. Ooh, okay. That Tundra means I don't have to play around Stifle. Or I don't have to give my opponent any target for Stifle. May have also just found exclusively cards that he wants to keep, which is another possibility on these low resources. If you brainstorm, just don't have bad cards to get rid of. That's a big deal. It's a lot of lands for a Mull to 5. Goyf. I'm going to brainstorm in response to that. I have 2 Perishes now. I'm going to put these 2 fetch lands back. I'm going to have to draw through all this stuff anyway. 2 cards in hand. Do I think one of them is Stifle? I have a huge moment right now to just like hero check my opponent's hand. I would love a basic Plains in play. All right. I'm going to hero check. If your one unknown is Stifle, you got me so good. Oh no, it's happening. Because I would think he would hold on to like a Sulfur Elemental with access to 3 mana, knowing that Lingering Souls comes up the board. If he just has Stifle here, good job. But also, I think it's a calculated risk to not play around it. Ouch. All right, well, had it. I'm going to take 5 this turn. Ponder's the last card in hand. It's a good chance that that ends up being game. So if I just like go Underground Sea Perish that turn, the pressure's way off. Yeah, that just didn't seem likely to me, but it's obviously a huge blowout if it happens. And another Delver of Secrets has not been seen in any of our games. Just mashing me with green cards. Now with Perish in hand, just 3 creatures at play, 2 of them are fucking blue. I'm enraged right now. I'm losing my mind. Okay. And all of these have 3 power and I'm at 6. So basically dead. I'm going to cast Lingering Souls because that's the only way I'm going to get another turn. And even that's really bad. Because with all the cantrips cast, I just think this Delver is likely to flip. Delver flipped Revealing Spell Pierce. Can't beat that card either. Okay, yep. We're dead. And like that's the thing about that Stifle. Like Stifle, based on how the game unfolded, it's not a likely card for him to have. But if he does just have Spell Pierce or Lightning Bolt or any of the other cards in the deck, my play is much better than playing around Stifle. But instead, we're just going to lose. And, yep, can't do anything about it. GG. Calculated decision, went wrong. Same thing that happened in the first one. Maybe I should just be playing like a wuss, and I would win more. On to the final round. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. If you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or advertising your events to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. Players just have to sign up online, then scan the QR code in-store. Give competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. The self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to TopDeck.gg so your community can relax and focus on playing Magic. I'm on the draw for the 3rd match, and unfortunately, I have to rebuild the first half of Game 1 from replays because although I just went through a massive process of fixing my computer, it crashed again, and I'm pretty bummed about it. Okay, this hand, I'm playing against 4-color Czech Pile, a deck that is insanely well built to beat exactly this deck. Czech Pile was kind of the bigger solution to Grixis Delver back in this era, which is a tough pairing to be on the draw against and down 2 games in the set. We're not playing for anything, just, pride. But being down 2 games and pairing into on the draw a matchup that was built to be bad for me is going to take some work. What I do get is they're a full 4-color deck trying to cast a pile of greedy spells like Hymn to Turok into Kolaghan's Command into Jace the Mind Sculptor with Leovold somewhere in the mix. Like, that's really what this deck's trying to do. And without Deathrite Shaman, they only play 20 lands. Deathrite Shaman ties it all together. I'm a 4 Wasteland deck. I'm a Daze deck. I'm really good at killing Deathrite Shaman, and I have Deathrites on my own. And with all that information, I'm not going to keep this hand. They are built to be a Snapcaster Mage midrange deck. These Snapcasters are just in my deck as, like, would be nice to have 1 or 2 of these to go over the top in Delver Mirrors. And I'm not going to sign up on my opening keep to engage Czech Pile exactly where they come from, which is the Czech Republic, by the way. This hand, much better. I bottomed a Snapcaster. I get to probe. I get to see what's going on over there. I get to build my whole hand around that information. Lightning Bolt, if I find red, can kill a Deathrite Shaman. Wasteland can follow up. If I could kill Deathrite and waste them, then the deck just might not work. It's got Bloodstained Mire. I Gitaxian probe. I see Leovold, Jace, Brainstorm, and 3 lands. Like, that's what I'm talking about. This is, you know, just Brainstorm 3-drop, 4-drop versus my Wasteland. Deathrite Shaman's in. I found that off probe. Just, you know, you get a card for free. So I unlocked the red source with my draw step. I unlocked the Deathrite with the probe. Now I'm way ahead on mana, which is what I need to be doing in the early game. Blazes Brainstorm looking for an answer to Deathrite. Doesn't get it. I Wasteland you. I got Deathrite ready. Deathrite activation can turn off potential Snapcaster Mage stuff, and he needs another mana to Snapcaster, but attacking with Deathrite deals 1, activating Deathrite deals 2, and constricts future Snapcasters. And I don't want to just ponder and attack for 1. I don't want to Brainstorm if I'm not shuffling, and I wanted to use my Wasteland that turn, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to shuffle. End step, eat the Brainstorm. Now I play my own Brainstorm, found Young Pyromancer. This starts to snowball advantage. This is one of the few 2-for-1s my deck actually plays versus this deck made of 2-for-1s. And we got Force of Will pitching Jace. A lot of respect for that. We know he can cast Leovold this turn, but I have Lightning Bolt that can clear it. Just take my medicine, give him a card, Bolt Leo, waste you. Hopefully we're ahead. There's the Leovold. And him having to use the Force on that Young Pyromancer is huge, because if the Force was still in hand on this Lightning Bolt, the game would have ended immediately. This man is just 2 cantrips into Leovold. I find Force of Will True Name Nemesis off of that Ponder, which is insane, because now I can answer his next play and stick True Name, where the only out in the main deck is Counter It or Diabolic Edict. And for Edict to resolve, he has to A, have the 1 of Edict, and B, I can't have any other creatures, and I have this Deathrite. So I force K command to keep Deathrite around. True Name's in. You're on a 1-outer from here, and it's a 0-outer until you kill Deathrite Shaman. Preordain goes top-bottom, fetch, Preordain goes bottom-bottom, and finds Murderous Cut. There's a million 1-for-1 removal spells in the deck. I'm not surprised. Found one for Deathrite, but now the Edict is on, but it is a 1 of just bottom-bottom Preordain. And of course, because that has been the way of this series, has the 1 of Diabolic Edict after bottom-bottoming Preordain. So clearly didn't find what he wanted, but just had it anyway. I draw Daze, just stone fucking blank at this point in the game. And opponent has 1 card in hand. They're at 8 life. I have 3 Lightning Bolts left in my deck. We could still, if I draw my other True Name or a Snapcaster or a Deathrite or something immediately, and he just runs bad for a while, we could still make this happen. But there's so many cards in their deck, like Jace, Leovold, Kolaghan's Command, Snapcaster Mage, etc., Baleful Strix, that are just 2-for-1s that also make it harder for me to win moving forward. Features Snapcaster, finds K command, strips the Daze from my hand, picks up the Leovold. And then here's the last big decision to make, and I'm going to pause this because it matters. I could have held the Snapcaster Mage to snap Bolt Leovold, but that just feeds him another 2-for-1 and doesn't push the board forward at all, because then he just blocks my Snapcaster with his, and he's up multiple cards on that exchange. So I decided to ponder, because if Ponder finds Delver or True Name Nemesis or Cabal Therapy, I can Cabal Therapy the Leovold, answer it on 1-for-1 rather than 2-for-1 basis. Or if I find a Delver or a True Name, I can try to get these last points done in spite of the Leovold. And I decided to go for Ponder to try to execute my own game rather than playing to drag the game out. I decided to play to win. And it went by kind of quick, but there was a Delver on top of... There was a Delver, a land, and a Young Pyromancer in the Ponder. So I did keep the Delver and play it. Though we know his only card in hand right now is Leovold. If I could just flip this Delver, crack a few times, we're good. I'm not blocking Snapcaster because that turns on Snap Diabolic Edict to kill my flyer. Delver finds another Delver, which now if I flip Lightning Bolt, he's just dead. And if I flip any other spell, dead in 2 hits. And I believe this is where we pick up the live recording. We are back to live recording. Sorry about the crash. We are back just in time to see my Delvers hit a polluted Delta. Can't catch a break anywhere. And I have to actually play out the Delta here because... Oh, nope, I'm just going to get it discarded by Kolaghan Command. All right. I don't want to play this game anymore. Okay. Going to try to improve my mood here. Already disappointed with how hot my opponent has run in all games so far, and then to crash and lose my audio. Disappointing, but time to bounce back. Opponent's sideboard contains Blue Elemental Blast, Chandra Torture Defiance, 2 Flusterstorm, Hydroblast, Liliana of the Last Hope, Marsh Casualties, Painful Truce, 2 Pyroblast, 1 Red Blast, 2 Surgical, 1 Thoughtseize, 1 Toxic Deluge. I could see about 12 of those cards coming in here. Probably doesn't have 12 cards to cut, though. It's like the probably 1 Jace, Thoughtseize, the Force of Wills, and then you got to decide what you're doing with the rest of that. Pyroblast obviously coming in for me. I can see my own Kolaghan's commands. I don't really want to meet them where they are, is the problem. Because they're a better Kolaghan's Command Snapcaster deck than me. Electrickery can clear out the Baleful Strixes and Snapcasters and give me an attack. Little unconventional, because it doesn't make sense any other time than that to do that, but I think it works. Sucks to board out Daze on the play, but I also just don't think it's going to be very good against an opponent who knows how to play around it. I think I still want all my Force of Wills, because the game will come down to 1 essential card from my opponent, like that Diabolic Edict in game 1. And is Force of Will better than Flusterstorm? Force doesn't counter Leovold, but Flusterstorm can create stress on things like Kolaghan's Command and Edict, and... Okay. I'm going to leave 2 forces in. This hand is pretty sweet. That's a lot of Deathrite Shamans. It's so many Deathrite Shamans, in fact, that I'm not even going to probe my opponent on turn 1. I don't care if Deathrite Shaman dies. And I might care if I get an extra 1/1 out of Young Peasy. Basic Swamp. You're on Deathrite. Okay. Now it could get weird. But I'm not putting a fetch land in the graveyard. I probe you, I get a 1/1. Powerful interaction. Rainstorm, Preordain, and some fetch lands. Cool thing about Deathrite Shaman, and by cool I mean frustrating and not actually cool at all, is that because this ability targets, it can't be considered a mana ability, which means it can be responded to. Which means that whoever tries to Deathrite first, the opponent can eat the same land they were targeting and fizzle the mana generation. And that's a part of multi-Deathrite gaming that is super stupid. Here's a Preordain off of the Volcanic Island. He's got Swamp up. If he wants to just eat Preordain main phase, that does work. Doesn't seem interested. I don't blame him. I could Wasteland Volcanic Island and just leave my Deathrite back. I'm going to attack with Young Pyromancer and see if this is a trade he's interested in. I can't imagine, but I'm okay if he is. Yeah, of course. Take 2 there. And then if I Wasteland you, Wastelanding someone who has a Deathrite Shaman, not always the smoothest option, but my Deathrite is up and not being used for anything else, I can just leave it on stifle your mana generation duty. You can nug me for 2 with that Gitaxian probe. I don't mind. Sitting on Pyroblast and several more Deathrites. Once I get 2 Deathrites into play, I'm just the Graveyard King and nothing else matters. There's Scalding Tarn. And I don't want to eat this Preordain in the end step because that would suddenly turn on Kolaghan's Command, a card that I'm otherwise not prepared to fight against. Okay, I'm going to Ponder with my black mana, leaving up Pyroblast. 3 lands, shuffle that quickly. Snapcaster Mage kind of rules. And I'm going to attack with Young Pyromancer again. He didn't trade last turn, don't think he's going to start now. Because I pondered, I don't get to play out a bonus Deathrite, which means he gets to drain me for 2. And despite me having 4 creatures to his 1 and me attacking twice to his 0, his life total is higher than mine. Fetching land number 2. Marsh Casualties. Yeah, that card's real good. Kills my Young PZ and all its friends. Now I am going to chip shot the Marsh Casualties, though. I don't want that snapped back, and if I get his Deathrite tap going into my turn, that just gives me a lot more options. And 2 mana doesn't cast Kolaghan's Command. Okay. Brainstorm unlocked. I think I'm just going to play out another Deathrite, though, and pass, and just have 2 to his 1. I could have 3 to his 1. Yeah, I'm going to go 3. Because leaving this one up still denies the mana, which is what the job of this card is right now. Badlands fetched in the end step. Exiling Preordain. We're both at 12. Got 5 cards in hand to my 3. I have 3 Deathrites in play to his 1. No spells in the graveyard left to eat. But we both have spells in our hand that would suddenly unload all of this. Him to Turok. I mean, that's annoying. Let's see what we can do here. I could Brainstorm. Could just let this resolve. Alright, fine. Pyroblast is the last card in my hand. Diabolic Edict. Okay. Don't care about that. Okay, then we go to my turn. Bolt your Deathrite is pretty sick. Yeah, Bolt your Deathrite. I'm gonna eat a land on the way out. And then I can pass with double Deathrite activation. Just eating my Wasteland. There might be a spell here, there might not be. Blue in the pool. Brainstorm. Okay. If he finds Force of Will, if that's even in the deck, I could Pyroblast it. Okay, his Deathrite's dead. I'm just going to pass, because this represents 4 damage or 4 mana. Kolaghan's Command, making me discard. I'll respond by exiling Diabolic Edict from the graveyard. And yep, I lose my Pyroblast. Like caramba. Exile Kolaghan's Command from the graveyard. Opponent's at 8, I'm at 12. They have 2 cards in hand, though, and their deck's way better from this spot than mine is. I'm going to cast the spell I have. This just runs this into removal, but as we've seen, the deck also plays discard and all other manner of horrible thing for me. Preordain. Bottom. Baleful Strix. Yep, first appearance of that one. Unbeatable card. Delver of Secrets. I'll play that. And just wait for it to die. Okay, Pyroblast. Doesn't want material in play right now. The deck plays so many 2-for-1s that it can afford to 1-for-1 aggressively like that. Could have even let that resolve, let it be in play, let me reveal a card next turn, then kill it, get extra information, but using mana as efficiently as possible rather than sniffing out extra information. Second Baleful Strix. I couldn't beat the first one. I did board an Electrickery, though. If there's an out, it's in there. Okay, Electrickery off the top. For fuck's sake, can I get 1 good draw in this set? 1 miracle draw? Nope. Absolutely not. Okay, passing the turn. And now Young PC's dead. This match is over. I will take 1 or 2 more draw steps before scooping. Alright, I'm going to pay the mana on Gitaxian Probe, because life total matters here. Opponent's got 2 lands in hand. Okay, I mean, I guess we're technically still playing. His Wasteland's not doing anything, though. Like, after this attack, I'm now losing the race, even if I rip True Name here. I'd have to rip True Name into Electrickery, and then opponent can't draw Lightning Bolt ever. Okay, we're dead. GG's. We are going to debrief with Andreas, and I will do my best to put a smile on my face, although this was a categorical smashing of everything that could go wrong for me went wrong, and everything that could go right for him went right. Deep breath, smile, go talk to the person who has just swept me across the floor. The BoshNRoll channel is proudly partnered with the Resleevables.
Good. All right, here we go, gang.
In this YouTube series, hosts Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan take us on a set-by-set journey through the good, the bad, and the ugly of Magic's history. Each episode is a focused deep dive into the facts about a set's design and release, the Magic lore expressed through the cards in that set, Tournament Edition gameplay videos featuring products and Pro Tour decks of the era, an award show that shouts out the best and weirdest cards of the set, and a final grade for the set's overall success. Whether you want a history lesson or a nostalgia hit, The Resleevables has it at youtube.com/theresleevables.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is now the debriefing. I'm Andreas Peterson, also known as Ecobaronen. I'm joined here by Brian, BoshNRoll, and we just finished a set of, what do we call this? Legacy? Historic Legacy? What do we call this?
Yeah, Throwback Legacy, Legacy through the eras, Time Travel Legacy, anything. Just whatever you like. Apply
More
it.
time traveling. I like that, because last time we visited the future, and now it's time to go to the past.
Right.
So I was super excited about this idea, mainly because, it's a big part of our history. Like, it's the path that led us here. So I think it's cool to revisit. And I'm happy you also liked the idea. And you were kind of the driving force behind finding these kind of iconic matchups, or at least iconic decks. Can you talk a little bit about, like, what made you pick the certain decks for the certain matchups, from the certain eras, rather?
Yeah, I knew I wanted a Counterbalance top deck because that's such a ubiquitous and it's such a picture of the era. Extended as well, that was a big deck, and then when Extended rotated Counterbalance out, or maybe Extended just died, I forget what happened, but it went from Extended being the top Counterbalance format to Legacy being the top Counterbalance format. And obviously all of that changed in 2012 when Avacyn Restored came out and Terminus entered the chat. Right. And top became, from a kind of, it was oppressive and annoying the whole time, but it went from oppressive and annoying in a way that we can have a fun kind of game around into a spot where it's like, this is just bullshit. And I wanted a top deck from before Terminus.
Yeah, so that's why your deck looked a bit weird. I think, was that named Supreme Blue or something? Didn't it have like some kind of... it used to have Redulcan Shackles in the deck. Maybe I misremember. I didn't play very seriously at the time.
Yeah, it was called Next Level Blue in
Next
Extended.
Level Blue, okay.
Yeah, and people like Luis Scott Vargas, I remember back when he was not Luis Scott Vargas yet. I mean, that was his name, but he was like LSV, this kid coming off Magic Online to start playing Paper. It was way in the early days. He was in on that. I remember Gabriel Nassif iterating on it. Patrick Chapin was a huge innovator on the Extended shell. These are all names from the late 2000s. Magic Pros.
Sure.
Yep. But yeah, that was just the default kind of like smart person deck. The way that kind of Delver gets that now of like, I'm going to, put my glasses on and my whatever. And
big brain stuff is going to happen. I'm going to resolve cantrips.
Yes, I'm going to be very smart. I'm going to plan 2 turns ahead with my brainstorms. But then there's the other layer of not only are you setting up your brainstorms and ponders like you are now, but they're also going to trigger Counterbalance. So you have to predict what cost spell your opponent's going to cast on their next 2 turns, in addition to how you want to map out your own game plan. Just that kind of super heady, tiny little edge stuff that Delver decks play now. That was the deck in that era.
Yeah, because when you look at the deck, it's like you play Tundras, you play Volcanics. The red splash is like Pyroblasts and Sweepers. What were the need for Sweepers at the time? Is it something similar? Like, is it Merfolk? Is it just sweeping Mongoose off? Like, what's the need for having the Fire Spouts in there? Because that was kind of a eyebrow raiser.
Yeah, it was Mongoose. It was Merfolk. The event that I pulled this from, Grand Prix Columbus 2010, was won by Merfolk.
Yeah, that's true. I recall that.
Yeah, Merfolk won that tournament. Also in the top 8 of that tournament, the early prototype Survival Vengevine deck was there. Vengevine's an
Wow.
X3. Firespout bops that up. Yeah, Nimble Mongoose. Delver Secrets wasn't printed yet when this
Right.
list came from, so creatures were just different back then.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no wastelands in the mana base as we see these days. Like a lot of things have changed. So let me see here. The deck that was paired up against was my sneak attack deck, and just looking at Woodfall Primus just made me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Like, what a terrible card. Like, does that ever get the job done against like Swords to Plowshares and stuff like that? In the games, I was lucky to draw Emrakul. That works fine, right? But Woodfall Primus wouldn't do much of anything.
Yeah, that actually came up in our game in I think it was our game 1. I don't know, game 1 or 2. One of the
There are
games.
Yeah, there
Uh,
was one of the games where you could have brainstormed, but did something else. Was that it?
yes, I had Brainstorm that might find Force of Will, or I had Swords to Plowshares ready to go. Where if you sneak in Primus, I lose 1 land, but then I get to plow the Primus and you're left with nothing. Instead of
Yeah.
losing 2 lands and you get to keep the 5/5. And
Mhm.
it was just a coin flip of do I think you have Emrakul or not? And take the guaranteed out to Primus or the maybe out to Emrakul. And I decided to take the guaranteed out to half the hits rather than the, you know,
Yeah, I was about to say because
right.
the off chance that you spike a Force of Will, right? That's what we have to compare it to.
Yes, if I knew Force of Will was on top of my deck from an earlier Ponder or something, I would have obviously brainstormed to just counter the sneak attack
Yeah.
regardless, but taking the chance. And I ended up brainstorming on the next turn or in response to the Emrakul attack or something and found Force of Will, obviously, so it looked very stupid. But like if your
Yeah.
deck was just Emrakul and Grizzlebrand, I would have chased the Force because Plow doesn't do it either way. But
Wow, that's actually a great point. Because
yeah,
my deck was worse on paper, your card could line up against half of those payoffs. So it,
exactly.
you know, it made sense to make the quote unquote bad play and look silly. Like, okay, I like that a lot. Like that's super funny. So it's actually an advantage for me in that game that I played a bad creature over a good creature.
Right. And I know we're going to talk about each of the matches one at a time, but let me tell you, every time I took a, you know, 95-5 line, you had the 5 or whatever throughout every single game we played in this whole set. You had it
Good.
every single time. And every single thing I lined up, every single thing I deduced was just wrong. And
That's
that was a
that's
theme
tough.
throughout the whole set.
Yeah, that's a tough day at the office for sure. Yeah, but I mean, we can start with that sneak matchup. So for me, it's very straightforward. We play with open deck lists. My deck does not get better over time, so I just try and sculpt and hope for the best, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't think there's too much strategy. Obviously, I can maybe wait a turn to develop more mana, play around with a little bit of soft counters, but for the most part, I just played my cards, and I was lucky to have good draws with either back-to-back Haymaker or backup for my Haymaker. I especially like do you remember the Pierce double days
Oh, yeah.
turn?
I remember. Yep.
Yeah, so back at that point I was like, okay, if you have a spell pierce, I don't know if you had a spell pierce, but it was like it was a good time for you to play a spell pierce, but that would be bad against my spell pierce. But I had double days, so it didn't really matter too much. I don't know if you had anything or you were dry there.
Yeah, that matchup, that was the one that we kind of put the least thought into in our planning
Right.
stages. It was just kind
Right.
of, I knew I wanted to play countertop, and you
Yeah.
just picked another deck from that top 8 that you thought would be fun. I
Yeah, I
actually
was like,
think
what
that
about
matchup
Snake
was
Show?
horrible. Uh, like, I'm not regretting it. Like, it's cool to showcase a thing from the era, but I think if we really wanted to showcase countertop gaming, that was a mistake because the game's frequently over before counterbalance comes down, or at least the important part of the game's over. Like maybe I'm supposed to mulligan more aggressively, find the counterbalance, find soft permission, and make the maze harder for you to navigate. But
Yeah.
I was keeping hands that were like 2 lands, 2 counter spells, and some cantrips. And
Yeah,
uh,
I like that. I think it's a
yep,
losing proposition if you mulligan those long term. Obviously, I can power through if I have a great hand, but mulliganing is not that great either, especially with all those dead cards game one.
right. Having 3 main deck fire spouts against Sneak and Show, like that sort of thing. I think that was not the best showcase, but it did show. We did get to play Sneak and Show where what if it's Woodfall Primus was a real decision I had to
Yeah,
make, and it
yeah,
affected the game.
yeah. There was it was like minor sub game of how you played against my soft counters. I could imagine from your point of view where oh we want to beat like big card plus days or big card plus pierce, so we play a bit conservatively with our ponders or whatever the case may be. But yeah, definitely in the minor. Mainly, I was just wondering how did Sneak and Show look at the time, but of course that deck doesn't, on average, lead to the best games. That's just how it goes, right?
Yep. And we can see how that sneak attack deck, even with Woodfall Primus in it, made top 8 of a Grand Prix. Because if all the best players were playing countertop and you're making your win push before Counterbalance can even be down, much less manipulated. Like countertop is really a deck that thrives in 10, 15, 20 turn games where they get to set up all their moving pieces and just hit them with a show and tell. It still works now as it did back then.
Yeah. Definitely. So what did we have up next? Then I think we moved to 2012. This is still before I started playing competitively. I played at the local store. I was one of the best players, but big fish in a small pond type of thing. I never opened a SCG stream. I never read an article, so I wasn't really playing competitively back then. But which decks did you pick out? You were like Teamer Delver, Canadian Threshold, and
Esper
Esper
Stoneblade.
Stoneblade is like a lock for. So why did you think that was like the premier matchup you wanted to showcase?
Yeah, I went over in my deck text kind of where I was as a player during each of these eras. And this 2012 era, I was living in a bigger city than I was in 2010. I had better people around me. I was playing a lot of Legacy. And this metagame, after Innistrad, but before Avacyn Restored, just that 6-month window where we had Delver, we had Snapcaster Mage, we didn't have Terminus yet.
Right.
What the best decks were Esper Stoneblade, Rug Delver, and Maverick. It's just 3 extremely fair decks. 2 of them built around Stoneforge Mystic. One of them doesn't even play cantrips. Like, it was a really intense, fun way to go back and forth. Every resource matters. Like, I called out Ancient Grudge off the deck list in your Rug Delver deck. I was like, I remember this. Ancient Grudge was an unbeatable hammer. And the game I got off you in that set, I was like, don't try Ancient Grudge. Just fingers crossed. I can't beat Ancient Grudge. It's unbeatable. And like every other card, you can, when something like 1 copy of Sideboard Ancient Grudge can flip a whole matchup if it shows up or not, and how you time it, where you put it, can massively impact your tournament success. Like, that's just good, healthy Magic. I love that era so much.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, personal preference, we all like different kinds of Magic. Like, there's some kind of power ranking. So would you say, is the grass greener on the other side? Was the Christmas more snowy back in the day? And like, are you a bit nostalgic when it comes to Legacy?
I am nostalgic and practical at the same time. I am among the group of people who believe that Legacy was the best in history in that window between Innistrad and Avacyn Restored. But I'm also not a person who thinks we should ban 35 cards and get back to that. And I know there are folks in a various seriousness. Some people, like, I think Honorog memes about it a little bit, but then there are people in my YouTube comments and replying to me on Twitter who actually think we should ban everything, ban every Modern Horizon set, ban every Commander release until we're back to 2012 Legacy. And that's not going to happen, even though I do think that format was phenomenal.
Yeah. So I wanted to one follow-up question to that, because I believe that with technology and how players are approaching the game, everybody has access to, good players' thoughts. I can go and subscribe to your Patreon today and get a lot of info that would take me hundreds of hours to accumulate myself. So a lot of things changed when it comes to that and how accessible information is. Deck lists are out minutes after a tournament is finished, etc., etc. How much do you think that affects, like, if we flip the script on, the information is as it is now, but the card base was back then? I just think the meta would be like way more polarized than we remember it. Also because the game wasn't as explored, I guess. And yeah, do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. It was smaller. We waited for the Legacy Star City event to come out, and those deck lists would come out like Monday or Tuesday every 2 or 3 weeks. There wasn't an event every weekend. It wasn't always Legacy when there was an event, and then it took a couple days for people to type those decks manually into StarCityGames.com and then post them. And we would be like, oh, wow, they're up to 3 Chain Lightnings in Rug Delver. That's really aggressive. Like, that's the kind of thing we were dialing in on versus like, nobody was trying Grixis Delver or like blue-red Delver. Sometimes people would drop the Tarmogoyfs and play Fire Blast and Price of Progress in the main and be crazy. Like, wow, that's so controversial. But no, like there was, and in the Star City circuit, it really benefited the people who showed up every week to just play some sort of nuts and bolts. I'm going to top 16, I'm going to top 8, I'm going to top 32, collect my min cash, collect my 3 or 4 Star City circuit points, and just go on to the next week. Nobody was trying to win it like it was the Pro Tour. Like they have to win today. They were just trying to put up a good result this week and do it again next week.
That's actually a good analogy. That kind of, because these days everybody's trying to get the last possible percentages right out of everything. Back then it was like nobody thought about if Temur Delver was a slightly worse choice than Maverick on a certain weekend. Like people played to their strengths, what they enjoyed the most, right? And they were competitive, and who could really tell the difference? That's how I saw it anyway.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. Like it's just good for different. It's different basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I was the Rug Delver player in that era. We didn't want me playing Delver twice in this set, so we gave you Rug Delver, but I was the one playing Nimble Mongoose in the actual era, so it was fun to be on the other side.
And funnily enough, I've never played the card before. I simply thought it was too bad. Like even back then, I didn't like how that deck ran out of gas. It just didn't feel right. So I was not in my wheelhouse, which made it even double cool, I guess.
Well, the game you killed me with Mongoose, I had 2 Swords of Plowshares in my hand, and you had 2 Mongoose that did basically all 20 damage, so you figured it out.
I figured it out, and that's my that's my first experience with that. So that's actually kind of cool. I didn't play much of those decks. I mainly played like mono white, like how the mono white deck came to be was way back when, before I cared about Legacy, and Thomas did well with that deck later on, to say the least. So a pretty cool history lesson there. Something I want to ask about is the 3 Force of Wills, because I remember that from my local game store, from the people who like watch streams and followed the SCG and stuff. Why like 3 Force of Wills? I don't think I ever got, like, can you explain it?
Yeah, the best decks were Rug Delver, Esper Stoneblade, and Maverick. Which of those decks do you want 4 Force of Wills against? None of them.
Neither. So you're drawing the first Force Will less often, but when you draw 2, you could have just pitched the second. So it's basically to gain percentages from not drawing the first one as often, right?
Right, and it was slightly after this era, maybe slightly. No, I'm trying to figure out when New Phyrexia came out. It was slightly before this era, so that would have been late 2011. James Rinkowitz won Grand Prix Providence with 0 Force of Wills in his main deck. He was banned mid-range, and the Mental Misstep was legal, so it was a little different. Incentives were a little different, but all 4 of his Force of Wills were in the sideboard. So it was a big thing in that era that cards just weren't worth 2 cards, and the games were so fair, and cutting your 4 Force of Wills and main decking like 2 Fire Spouts could just flip your Merfolk matchup where you don't want Force of Will anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. So basically, Force of Will is a sideboard card against Dark Ritual strategies, show and tell, stuff like that, and it was kind of bad anywhere else, basically.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's very valuable. Something I noticed during the games was that these old habits were forgotten for me. Like just like the whole probe, Deathrite, back and forth, like Deathrite versus Deathrite. I wasn't exactly in my wheelhouse here. Did you feel comfortable? Was it just like riding a bike for you, or did you feel similarly?
My first hand in our 2017 matchup was like 2 Snapcasters, a Delver, 2 Underground Seas, and a Wasteland. And I was like, this is not what I want out of this deck. And I mulliganed to a hand that was like Probe, Deathrite, Wasteland, Lightning Bolt. And I was like, let's go. And I saw your hand that was just like Leovold and Jace and some lands. And I was like, we got him, team. And
my hand was terrible there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I never strung together the full like Probe, Young Pyromancer, Cabal Therapy You Twice line, which was so ubiquitous in that era. But yeah, just having hands with Gitaxian Probe in them and you get to play 4 is just so stupid. That card was legal for so long. It just it doesn't make any sense.
I definitely did not understand the power of it. I even looked up, I won like a big Legacy tournament in Denmark, 150 people with Storm. I did not play Gitaxian Probe even though it was legal. Like I didn't understand the power of it like 9 years ago, which is amazing to think about. Like the value of knowing exactly your opponent's hand. Because sure, when you're a good player, you know the metagame, you can come up with an educated guess, but knowing is different than educated guess. So Yeah, that was not my proudest moment, but it's also kind of cool to look back on.
Yeah, I mean, back then we were doing all sorts of stuff like standard fairies in 2008, 2009 played like one or two ponders. It's just ponder's been banned and restricted in eternal formats, and people were like, I don't know if that's worth 4 slots in my standard deck. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
People just didn't really get it with cantrips for a while. And before Ponder was printed, Legacy or Type 1.5 gamers, the second best cantrip was Portent. Like, it was Brainstorm, and then you play some number of Portent. And that, like, cantrip kind of Xerox gaming really came into its own with Ponder. Then we got Preordained shortly after that. Now we have Consider and all this other stuff. But
Yep. I
Portent
even
was a lot
remember
better than Opt.
signing up with. Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, I think I signed up with very early. What was that deck called? Like it was Werebear, Nimble Mongoose, Meddling Mage, Mystic Enforcer.
That was Grow, Miracle Grow.
Yeah, or Threshold, or whatever it's called
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time.
Yep.
Yeah, and that they played like Sleight of Hand. So yeah, great point about we played like bad cantrips happily, but then Ponder took a while to catch on. That's kind of funny.
Yep. And then Gitaxian Probe. I don't think it ever got banned in standard, but Probe You, Snap Probe You was a big part of that standard format. And then like
Yeah.
Gutshot your 1-drop, Snap Gutshot your 2-drop was a part of that format too. Like that, it defined its Phyrexian Mana defined its standard era. Obviously the mechanics busted. And
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
and we just played with 4 probes in modern, legacy, and vintage for a very long time until all at once people realized it's not okay.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight something from the last match. Let's see if I can remember it. You seem to slow roll some Deathrites against my sweepers post sideboard because you played 2 on the same turn. Like, what does that tell you when you attack with Pyromancer? First of all, why did you attack? And second of all, when I don't block with my Deathrite, what are you just reading me that I have the sweeper, or like, can you talk to me a little bit about that game?
That had nothing to do with sweepers and everything about Deathrite. Your deck is designed to beat my deck. That is just it. Kolagod's Command, Snapcaster, Baleful Strix, Sweepers After Board, Leovold. Every card in your deck is built to grind my deck out because Grixis Delver was the best deck at the time, and Czech Pile, or whatever we want to call it, 4-color control, came out to push back and just put the lid and just shove Delver back into its chair, kind of. That was from the top down. And if you get to start casting your spells, I start losing. So I was leaving my Deathrite up to stuff your Deathrite. So you could never tap it for mana, or I would take your land and I would have mana instead. So my first Deathrite was just Rashadan Port. And then after that, it was there was a turn where Ponder looked more important than a second Deathrite to me.
Casting second Deathrite, got it.
Yeah, my opening hand had all 3 Deathrites in it, and I was just looking for windows where I could leave up.
Volcanic Island makes it complicated. You need to keep up your own Deathrite against my Deathrite. Okay, so all of that stuff combined.
Yeah,
okay.
And your deck has 3 drops, 4 drops in it, and my deck has 1 and 2s. And that whole game, I was just holding your Deathrite back with my Deathrite, holding up Pyroblast. The young Pyromancer started to apply pressure. I didn't think you'd want to trade, which is why I was attacking, because usually the player who has the active Deathrite is ahead in Deathrite mirrors. And I honestly thought I was doing great the turn where I killed your Deathrite and I had 3. And I was just like, okay, he's got to sweep me, and he's already used Marsh Casualties. And then you played like 3 spot removal spells in the same turn or something, and then I fell apart.
Yeah. I think I had a good brainstorm where I could, let's see, Call Against and Fatal Push on the same turn, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. And I bought back some other card. But yeah, and I needed to stop that part of the game from happening. And my Deathrite was just Rashadan Port. And I was chipping damage. I was generating elementals off the Young Pyromancer slowly. Like, I was pulling ahead and you weren't in that spot. And I was just trying to maintain that. Because if I tap out or get aggressive with my Deathrites and you just resolve Jace, then I'm way behind and I could have avoided it.
Yeah, there's a lot of small stuff there. For instance, I don't know how many lightning bolts you have in your deck post sideboard. Could be anything from 0 to maybe like 2 or 3. I don't even know. But if you don't have lightning bolt to draw to, it makes sense. You also want to get rid of my Deathrite if possible. So the 1/1s are actually unlocked because they were just standing there like a couple of 1/1s, right?
Yep.
So lots of small dynamics, and that one was closer in my memory. But that's also because I played that deck a lot and played against Delver a lot. How do you like my ability to draw the one of Diabolic Edict against the True Name? I'm pretty skilled magician, you must say.
Right. So I messaged you, like my computer crashed in the middle of that game and I had
Right.
to rebuild the game from a replay. My live reaction, I'm kind of glad it's gone. It was not charitable or like particularly
Okay.
becoming of a gentleman.
Okay.
I
Fair. Fair enough.
Because like that whole game, I knew Edict was the whole game. I'm like live narrating. I'm like, he's got one Edict in his list.
Yep.
He has to find the one Edict. He has to kill the Deathrite, because I'll just Edict that if it's still in play. If I draw any creature before he draws removal plus Edict, now I'm double Edict proof. And I'm just
Yep.
like, and then in one turn, you're just like, kill that, Edict you. And
Yeah.
after
some
bottom
good
bottom, you
brains
got
there.
preordained. It was like bottom preordain, and then double kill shot with the one outer plus the backup.
Yeah, I mean, that was just I mean, that is why you play a removal split, so you
Yep.
actually have the chance, but actually just finding it is a great feeling. For sure, because if I don't have that, I lose easily. Then my game plan needs to be something like kill your Deathrite, find my own Deathrite to semi-stabilize against the True Name hits, and getting you dead before it gets me dead, which is very hard. So, Diabolic Edict or Bust is not an unfair assessment of that game, I would say.
Right. And that was also a showcase of my list at the time because that's not a traditional construction of Grixis Delver. That wasn't stock at the time. My two True Names, two Snapcasters, Tombstalker, that's
Yeah.
to go bigger in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that did well because I top eighted Eternal Weekend, beat a ton of mirrors along the way. And but that's actually ends up hurting me versus a deck like Four Color because you're built to be a Snapcaster 2-for-1 deck. And having that gear to go a little bigger in the mirror where I'm just still my bigger gear is much smaller than your normal gear,
Oh yeah.
and I'm not as fast because I don't have the extra, chain lightning or whatever it is that would be in my deck if I wasn't playing Snapcaster and
Yeah, let me
Tombstalker.
think. I think the stock deck at the time maybe was like one more Pyromancer and a couple of Anglers in the mix. Does that sound correct? Gurmag Angler was the stock?
Yes, my Tombstalker having flying was a response to True Name Nemesis existing in the format.
All right.
So that's why I played Tombstalker over Gurmag, yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Small, but then again, when we play like one matchup, a lot of cards are gonna look silly, right? Because we at the time designed our deck to play against a certain field. Like the Chandra Torch of Defiance in my sideboard is also borderline embarrassing. But I just remember at the time like Pyroblast matchups, and that was kind of a decent card, like a haymaker against those matchups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's see if I have any more here on my list here. Otherwise, we can get out of there. Get us both out of here. Um, yeah. Did you register any cards where you're thinking, like, looking back, wow, these cards were pff, not the best at the time? Like we played a lot of spell snares at the time. Do you like that? Did anything else come to mind where, wow, that was super narrow. I didn't think about this at the time. Whatever, Magic has evolved.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit at the start of this debrief, where like what are the flex slots in Rug Delver this week? What's coming out of the Star City circuit? And I remember with great pride and great nostalgia during that era, thinking like my three flex slots instead of two Chain Lightning and a Spell Pierce, I'm going to play two Spell Snares and a Submerge in the main this week, and
Wow.
just feeling like a genius when I pair into the mirror 4 times in 7 Swiss rounds where Spell Snare and Submerge are busted. And then the next week, it's like, well, Rug Delver didn't do well last week. What are we doing against Stoneforge Mystic? Chain Lightning is way better than Submerge. Spell Snare still gets them. And then, really tuning those 3 or 4 slots. And Spell Snare was a card that was 0, 1, or 2, depending on my mood that morning in my Rug Delver list. And I had a moment in the video where I checked your list, your sneak attack list, and I was like, he's got Daze and 1 Echoing Truth for this Spell Snare.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that when Spell Snare got released and Sneak Attack as a deck completely ignored that card, and people played a lot of Spell Snare copies back then. Actually, I don't think it was that unnormal to see like 2 or 3. But if the metagame is Tarmogoyf, Stoneforge Mystic, Counterbalance, I
Yep.
mean, it's gonna have merit, right?
Yeah, and that was the top deck. Like we said, that was the smart person deck. That was the pro player deck. That next level blue, and next level blue was defined by top counterbalance Tarmogoyf, and Snare hits 2 of those cards.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed this going down memory lane. Some of it was memory lane for me. Some of it was actually going into the history books. Really cool to showcase basically what paved the way for where we are today. And yeah, I had a lot of fun. Maybe someday you will draw the one of and take a game off me or take a match off me, but it wasn't today.
I made that joke. I did board in my 1 of Electrickery in our last match to get through your Baleful Strixes.
Ooh, okay.
And there was one turn where I had Young Pyromancer in play and you had 3 Baleful Strixes. And I was like, please, one time. I deserve it. I've waited so long. And then I jumped through the Delta and conceded.
Yeah, you just, yeah, you would definitely deserve that. And I didn't think about that at all. I just wanted to use my mana the best possible. And,
Yeah, of course.
And get you dead.
Yep.
Okay, but yeah, thanks so much, Brian. Let's call it a wrap and you can get us out of here.
All right. That has been Andreas Ecobaronen. I am Brian, BoshNRoll, and thank you for watching this. If you're watching on Andreas's channel, come watch my side of the games. If you're watching on mine, go check out his, and we'll see you for whatever the next thing is.